Hey, how you doing? This is George with Truck Driver Nation. I know it's been maybe a week, just been super ass busy. But anyways, I want to do this video. This is going to be about so guys can understand what's going on. This is going to be the load payout breakdown for owner operators. I know everybody thinks, oh, everything's straightforward. But one thing about business, you're looking at your fixed cost and looking at your variable costs. One thing people don't really look at is where in the hell the money was going to begin with. And we're going to start back with the direct shipper. The direct shipper is actually the person that gives you the freight itself. Okay, that's going to be the one that they had the product. They got a hold of the broker got a hold of them. They made a deal, say, hey, can you get my freight moved? And they say, yeah, we can get your freight moved. And then by the time you get done, you as a owner operator, you see part of what's going on, but you don't see the full picture. And so we're going to discuss that so you can understand. And that literally says trucking is not a what the hell it is. That trucking is not a whatever. I can't remember what the hell I put on that one. But anyways, trucking, I'm not saying trucking is a scam, but when I'm as a freight dispatcher, I talk to people and I say, you know, as a freight dispatcher, I'm giving you all these different qualities, okay? And in that being given to you, you've got to understand what is going to be the advantage of working with me as a freight dispatcher. Because they say, well, we're a truck driver and now you're a freight dispatcher. Is that a good thing? Well, I'm gonna put it this way. As a freight dispatcher, being I was a truck driver, owner operator, I handled cars, I did driver recruiting and I did being a freight agent. Being a dispatcher is the best solution for me because I see all the ins and outs and ups and downs, and it ain't cool. And a lot of people get pissed off about it, but I'm like, there ain't much you can do about it. So what I want to do is hold up one second here. So when you're looking at the load pay breakdown for owner operators, this is kind of how it works. So shipper, that's your direct shipper, pays the broker. The broker takes a cut, and then the broker pays the dispatcher, and then the dispatcher pays the owner operator. Even though it's the owner operator is really getting paid, it's really the actual owner operator paying the dispatcher. But just to keep the sequence in order, that's what it looks like. So, anyways, we're going to use an example. So you got a shipper, it pays a broker. The shipper's going to pay him, let's say $2,000 a load. Don't matter what trailer. We're not trying to talk about trailers at this given point. And let's say the broker takes a cut. Now the broker can take anywhere from 10% to 25%, and it's in theory averages around 15%. I'm going to say that, yeah, that's true, but I know that brokers have taken as high as 36% on the ones that I particularly busted them out on. Okay. So that's me, George, telling you that I absolutely can testify beyond a shadow of a doubt that I know brokers have taken up to 36% of the overall freight price that was given to them by the shipper. Now, in this example, due to this, the $2,000, $300 will go to the broker. Now, the carrier or dispatcher gets $1,700 because they've taken that $300. That's only if they've taken a load because that was based on the 15%, right? Because remember, 15% is $150 for every thousand. So you do that, that's $300. Now, what if it had been 25%? That's 250. Now they took $500. See how quick that adds up? Adds up real quick. Now, let's say that you got a leased-on owner operator that's under a carrier. Now, the carrier normally takes a lot more. They take anywhere from 20% to 35% of the $1,700. Now, that's bullshit, but remember, they're off it. Now, we're talking about this is just off the top. This ain't, okay, well, we're going to throw this in, we're going to throw this in, we're going to throw this in. That is literally off the top. That means they're getting the gravy off the biscuit, and now you are actually left with whatever piece of meat that's left on the bone. So let's say, for example, that they're taking 20% to 35%. An example given is going to be 25%. So they just kind of put it in the middle. So that right there at 25%, they took $425. So remember, that's on the low end. Okay. Um, Now average ones, that's going to be give or take that, about 25% is normally what I do see as a driver recruiter. Um, as a dispatcher, when I'm negotiating different things, with the carriers or whoever if I'm helping, because remember, I got students, so I'm teaching them how to do this. So when I'm helping them, because I do partner up with my dispatch students if they choose to. If you don't want to, team up with me, I totally get it. It ain't no big deal. It's just business, right? So, but depending on that, that's about what I see is 25%. Now, that means out of that, since they took that 25% off, that was $425. Now the owner operator gets $1,275 from the $2,000. Now, so out of the original $2,000, the driver ends up with the 1,200. That's around 63% of the total. That's shitty. They've taken almost half your money, 63%. Now, and that was on the low end. Remember, we did 15% for the broker, and then we did 25% for the actual carrier. So remember that's how it goes. Now, and now remember, when we're talking about that one goes with a carrier, that's usually they can actually have their authority, and because some of them are trying to build up time, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I'm not trying to get off base, but to pay for an authority while you're trying to get time to work for another MC doesn't make a lot of sense, because in order for you to have it where your MCs actually generate time, it has to actually have the insurance paid up. So that gets the insurance, that BOC3. So now that means it's active and you're accumulating time. Now, for the independent owner operator, that means that they have their own authority. Now, for these, no carrier takes a cut. Now, what they may be doing, you or your dispatcher get the full 1,700 after the broker cut, because remember they took 15%, so that left 1,700. So now, if they're using a dispatcher, the owner operator is actually using a dispatcher. The dispatcher typically takes around 5 to 10%, because remember they've got their own authority. I don't deal with no owner operators that don't have their own authority, and it's got to be a good authority. But I give them a lot for that 5 or 10%. Of course, I don't charge 5%. I'm sorry, I just can't do it, because I have to do a lot of work to ensure that I've got your revenue actually up there. I'm not just going to be running off dispatch boards. But anyways, typically dispatchers take about 5 to 10%. So they want to use 10% for the given scenario, which I would normally do. And of 10% of that $1,700, that equals that dispatcher for their dispatch services is getting $170. And then obviously that means that the owner operator at this point, so we're doing the 15% and now the 10%, which equals 25%. The reason the numbers are a little off is because we're not taking the 25% off the 2,000. Each increment that it goes down, 15% off the original 2,000, that 2,000 now turned to 1,700, which ain't originally the 2,000. So then it takes that 10% off of that given rate, which equals that 170. So you take that and then the other money off. That's going to bring it, because remember it's 10% off the 1,700. That's going to be that now the owner operator receives 1,530. Now that at that point, because you're actually paying less money for your dispatch service, that brings it up to where the owner operator is keeping 76% of the original $2,000 as an independent owner operator using that dispatch service. So that definitely does help, but can you do it better than this? Yes, you can. And this ain't what this is getting off into, but when you're doing it this way, you definitely need to do direct shippers if you can take the lick. Because remember, doing a direct shipper, they may not have a factoring service. You may have to wait net 30 or net 60. Can you get them to cut you a check ahead of time? Yeah, you might say, look, I need fuel. It just depends on who it is and how you're negotiating the overall deal with that given shipper. So you just got to keep that in mind when you're making that type of move. So in summary, let's go over it real quick. The broker keeps the 10 to 25%, which is around 300. The carrier, if you're leased on with them, takes 20 to 35%, which is crazy. That's $425. Then the dispatcher, if you're going to use a dispatcher versus using a carrier, that's going to be between 5 and 10%, which is like $170. Now, the owner operator's net is going to be between 63 and 76%, which is going to be roughly $1,275 to $1,530, depending on if you're going to use a carrier or you're going to use an actual freight dispatcher. But anyways, the reason I wanted to tell you this is because look, that's just the simplest way of putting the breakdown. There is a lot of backwoods nickeling and scamming and double brokering. It ain't double brokering in that sense. It's the way that some of the shippers receive the loads. Let's say if they receive it, let's keep it simple. Broker took out their percentage, so that left $2,000. Now they send that $2,000 to that particular carrier, and now that carrier is taking a lot more than that 25%. They could mark it down on what they said they got for it, and then take a percentage off of that. However they want to do it. You can see by me saying that there's more than one way to take that money off of that before you give it to that owner operator. So keep that in mind when you're actually dealing with this. There's a lot of dirty stuff that goes on from the time the broker gets it all the way down to well, the direct shipper may, it depends on how that works. Everything, I don't want to solidify it and say, well, it's just this one way. That's not how this works. But the biggest point behind you is that you need to make sure that it's at least market value because you're dealing with these people. But if you can bear the load, direct shippers is the way to go. Okay. Um, but outside of that, I'm gonna really kind of leave it at that. But that's the whole scenario. But why trucking is not straightforward? It's just not honest. There's too much crap going on there. Going on. Are there people that are doing it honestly? Of course there is. But how often do you find those? You got to know them. I mean, for example, people messing with me, they know that I'm going to do it fair because if I want extra money off of it, I'll say, hey, I did this or I did this. Does that justify it? So most of the time they're going to say, no, no, no. You know what I mean? But if I really did them a good job, because remember, I'm not under a contract with them. As a freight dispatcher, you're not really I can't make an owner operator stay with me because I'm finding him freight. He can leave at any given point he wants, but am I justifying the means the means to the end kind of deal, but how much money I'm getting them that they normally wouldn't have got from any other dispatcher. So I want to make them more money so they do stay. But that's the reason I offer them these other details. But that's not in the subject. But you just got to remember when you're actually looking at this freight and where it's coming from and going to, who's taking how much. And that's not even figuring in the dirty business practices that a lot of people are practicing. So, anyways, I'm going to keep it at that. If you have questions, please ask me, and I will tell you what I know on how I've seen people do each other badly. Um, I've never seen much honesty going on with any of this. But if you want to know some questions, ask me. If you got a topic that you want me to cover, please ask me. I'm going to put all that contact information right down here below this video. But anyways, I hope this helped you out so you can understand what it's like when you're dealing with freight coming all the way from the direct shipper through the broker, through the whether it's a freight dispatcher or a carrier, based on those numbers, so you can see exactly where the money it's still your hard-earned money is going to before you get it, and why it gets down to 63%. And I'm sure it gets a lot worse than that. I promise you it does. I know it does, but I don't want to get this too watered down and confusing. But anyways, I appreciate this. I hope this content helped you out, gave you a better understanding of what you need to watch out for as a freight dispatcher because you need to know what the other people are doing. Remember, you're looking to be strategic. This ain't just fly by night, let's do this, let's do that. Think about the process. Think about what the possibilities are and always look at everything with a degree of untrust. It just saves you so much more agony. Even if it is right, I mean, be grateful for it, but there's so much distrust going on nowadays. You just got to really look at it in those lights. But anyways, thank you so much. I hope this helped you, and I look forward to you actually visiting Truck Driver Nation again. If you want to become a freight dispatcher, let us know. Get signed up. We've got some great programs going on. The way we let you pay for the program, so you can obviously get through it and then work from home as a freight dispatcher. But anyways, my name is George. I appreciate it. Everybody have a blessed day, and I look forward to talking to you soon.